All right, cool. So stuff I wish I had been taught in Linux 101. My Linux 101 class would have occurred around 2006 or 7. Just give you kind of a time frame for that. And actually, there's an amazing story if you check out. I have the crappiest website on the internet. This is my personal website, and it's got like 2 ridiculous blog posts on it. And one of them is all about the first time I ever installed Linux and how it resulted in me losing what was up to that point every stored picture of my 2 boys and every video that we had saved. It didn't go well. The dual booting did not go well, and I lost all the baby pictures. It's a good story though, so I won't go too deep into that one with this topic. But that's what we're going to is things that I picked up over the years that I wish had been illuminated to me earlier on. Hope if I go to my slide deck. There we go. Now, who am I? I'm TC. I coined myself as a dad, a husband, a pen tester, a traveling man, wink, wink, if anyone knows what that is, and an oddball among geeks. I think the last bit of that phrase there, a lot of us can probably associate ourselves with, because even amongst the the groups that we're in, sometimes it's possible to feel like you are the oddball in that group, and that is a lot of times how I felt coming up through the ranks of an IT and a security professional. Where I started off, I was in the Air Force. When I first started taking some college level classes for computer stuff, I was a mechanic on C-130s. I was out turning wrenches all day and coming home and pounding the keyboard all night. Later on, I moved in the Air Force where I changed jobs to where I joined space operations, and I started flying satellites, a little more high tech. And that was actually kind of a childhood dream come true kind of thing. I was a space camp kid and all that. So while I was there, they appointed me the Squadron SharePoint Administrator. It sounds very exciting, I know. SharePoint was brand new at the time for the Air Force, so they had to send us to a SharePoint Administrator class to certify us to be able to get admin privileges. While we were there, we were at a small company in town that would teach all kinds of certifications. And on a break, the lady running the course was talking about how they just picked up the ability to teach Certified Ethical Hacker. And I said, what's that? Just like countless other people have said when they've heard Certified Ethical Hacker. And needless to say, again, like countless others, that was the beginning of my journey to a security career field. So that's where I am today. So why am I doing this here right now today? I kind of explained it a little bit up front. But when I was still full-time in the Air Force and I had began taking classes locally at a small school locally about cybersecurity, I met some people there. Networking is, very important. You always hear that. But there was one guy that came out in the first month that I was there taking classes, and he gave a demo. Came back the next year, gave a demo again, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, can I apprentice under you? Can I like use my vacation time, my leave, and like hang out and see behind the curtain?" He said no. He said no because it was like NDAs and stuff, right? So after some talking and some technical talks and splinches, he actually took me on as an apprentice and would fly me out with him to pen test gigs and everything. So that's how I kind of got my foot in the door. Later on, I got tempted away from the Air Force, gave up my full-time Air Force career position to join a very, very attractive company there in town who I went through a series of interviews with, about 3 or 4 technical interviews, and they finally hired me on. And I was very, very foot stomp on this. I said, hey, I've got no certifications. I'm working on my degree. I don't have any really awesome experience. If you're good with that, if you're cool with that, and I'm the kind of person you think you want, then yeah, I'll come on. So they offered me the job, and I was there for about, I think, right about 6 weeks, and they let me go. And the given reason was that I just wasn't quite at the level they were looking for. And those 2 contrasting experiences just made me resolved that any opportunity I would have to talk someone through an issue, lend a hand, read a resume, do a mock interview. I've done hack the box stuff with some people in the past. If I have the availability, and if things are pretty cool, then I enjoy helping other people, because all those experiences happened to me 6 or so years ago now. Since then, I've worked on an internal pen testing team for the largest bank in America, and I have spent time on one of the DoD red teams. So, I kind of ran the full spectrum there, right? Got the first gig, got fired for not being good enough, and then wound up on what's probably one of the most elite groups of hackers in the country. So it's been a wild ride, and I just hope to kind of help other people where they're at as well. So beyond all that about why I'm doing it and who I am, let's get into the meat of what everyone wants to talk about, which is Linux command line. And I'm already missing my slides because I'm just getting off track here. But a big part here is if you help other people, you help yourself. If you share knowledge, you're going to reinforce the knowledge you have. And when you teach other people how to do something, I spent 16 years in the Air Force. Vast majority of that was as an instructor of some type. And the biggest thing I learned from being an instructor is when you teach someone something, so often they'll come at you with questions that you never considered, that you end up learning more about the thing that you're teaching. So you get better in the process. So we're going to talk a lot about Linux command line, well, all about Linux command line. The reason I'm focusing on the command line is because even though when I took the Linux 101 class back in 06 or whatever, I remember kind of scoffing at the idea of command line. Like, why do I want to go command line? Everything's graphical. I've got a desktop. I've got icons. Why do I want to CD in a directory if I can just double click on the icon and see what's in there, right? And it wasn't until a significant amount of time later, when I started doing this professionally, that I realized I spend all my time in the command line. When I was working the bank job, it was a very corporate environment. A lot of the server stuff, though, was all some type of Linux or Unix derivative. Even though our desktops were Windows and we were on an Active Directory domain, a lot of that supporting bank infrastructure was all Linux or Unix of some type. I think the big delta on that was I did a lot of ATM testing while I was there, and ATMs are Windows-based. But other than that, I spent a lot of time kind of relearning the things I should have remembered from Linux 101 and refining them and fine-tuning them on the fly, like in the field. Then after that, when I joined the DoD Red Team, that job was probably 90% Windows-based. U.S. government and DoD loves Windows servers and Windows environments. So I had never touched Active Directory before I got there. Matter of fact, in my interview process, the CTO of the company asked, how much Active Directory experience do you have? And I said, none. And they still hired me. Matter of fact, I think what won them over is when they said, what's your favorite programming language? And I said, Stack Overflow. I mean, that's the truth, right? So yeah, command line is huge, and Windows command line is just as important to learn as Linux, but for this talk, we're going to focus on the Linux side. And remember, in a job where the goal is to get remote access, it's going to be in the command line. It's extremely rare to find that open RDP port to go through, at least in my experience, maybe not yours. All right, so getting into it, here we go. First thing first, what is the environment they're working in? You've got two big phrases here, two big terms, the terminal emulator and the shell. And those terms end up being used conversationally back and forth, swapped between each other. So I just want to lay some groundwork here to make sure that we're all on the same page with definitions. So with a terminal emulator, this is something you're going to see more in a graphical environment. Let me just switch over my demo machine here. I threw together a quick Ubuntu virtual machine to do some stuff, and just make sure, Kellen, you can see the virtual machine now, right?
Yes, sorry, I had to unmute.
No worries. So I'm logging in as Stan D ARD user. And here you just have a fresh Ubuntu or Ubuntu, however you prefer to say it, 20.04, which I learned yesterday was a thing. It's like 2 days old, I think, on the market. This is just a basic user, does have admin privileges, but again, you see that we're in a graphical environment. In a graphical environment, when you open up your terminal, however you choose to do that, the thing that opens on your screen here, the whole box, the whole window, that is your terminal emulator. It's called an emulator because if you go way back in the day, all Unix was a terminal. It was just a display with the command line. That's all you got. To see that, we can do something called a TTY switch. You can't see this, but I'm hitting Control Alt F3, and it's doing nothing because I'm in demo mode. So of course it's not gonna like play nice with me, right? Because it never does that. I swear I practiced this last night. Well, okay, so that's not gonna, fun times. All right, so in your mind, imagine you don't see any of those graphics, right? It's just a black screen. So yeah, it was just a terminal. When the graphical environments began being introduced, obviously people didn't want to lose access to that terminal, so the emulators were born that would emulate that old experience. Let me bring that terminal back up here. Yeah, it is Control Alt F3. I'm 99% sure that's how I got in there last night, but oh well, right? All right, so now we're in the terminal. Inside the terminal, what you're looking at is your shell. Shell is a binary. It's an application that runs inside the emulator, or if you're on just a raw terminal, it's what you're looking at. It's the flashing cursor, right? It's the thing that is taking your ls command and then translating that to the operating system a way that it understands to give you back the contents of the directory. There are a lot of shells out there. The most common one that you're going to see that is installed on every system is called sh. Probably the second most common that's I think probably everywhere these days as well is bash. Bash is an enhanced version of sh. I'm going to walk through a little bit of that here in just a minute. And then you have some other ones out there like tcsh, which you think I would use, but I don't. ZSH, which is my favorite, and I'm going to demo that one a little bit later on as well. But sh and bash are like your bread and butter when it comes to shells. On Ubuntu, the standard shell here is bash. So I'm in bash right now. If I did a echo shell, you'll see I'm in bin bash. I'm sorry that's a little small in the font size there. There we go. So you see I am in a bash shell. I can tell by doing echo shell. If I wanted to see what a sh shell looked like, I could just do sh. And I know that looks a little weird now, but that is the whole shell. So if I did echo shell, oh, it's my environment didn't change. So this has been bash, but I am in a sh prompt now. I can go back by doing Control D, exit out of there, and I'm back in the bash prompt. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to a different. This is the standard GNOME terminal emulator. I'm going to switch to a different one. It has a few more capabilities. This is another emulator called Terminator. And one of the things I can do in Terminator, I can set up a little grid here. Zoom in some so you can all see what's going on. There we go. All right, so I'm going to set this first one up as a sh shell. Leave this one as a bash, and then we're going to go here and we're going to go into what I prefer, which is a ZSH. Actually, you know what? We're not going to do that yet. Sorry, that's a spoiler. Let's just look at these two. So we have sh and we have bash side by side. Nothing I can do in Terminator. I can go here and turn on what's called broadcast, where I broadcast to all, and now you'll see everything I type in goes into both those terminals side by side. So standard commands all work. You know, you can do ls, you can cd into documents, right? I can do ls there and see what's inside there. Now it does look like it's kind of messing up over here on the side. I don't know why. Again, this is demo mode, right? Everyone knows that demos work when you practice them, and then when you go live, it's just nonsense. Let me make that tab again there. All right. Zoom in some. Zoom in some. SH, and then go to broadcast. There we go. That's better. See new documents, second ls, side by side. There we go. A few things that are different here are the enhancements. Remember I said bash is an enhancement to sh. So one thing you can do when your terminal gets all congested but crap you don't want to see anymore is a quick shortcut is just Control L to clear the screen. Hit Control L, you see my bash cleared out, but my sh did not because it doesn't have that as part of its enhancement. I can, however, type clear and it clears it out. Another thing that we're going to cover in a different slide later on is tab completion. Does not work well in sh, works beautifully in bash. Now, so these are different shells. The reason I wanted to bring it up in this kind of environment is if you are working remotely on a machine and you find that a command isn't working, something easy that should be working that's not. I'm actually kind of spacing on the thought of that right now, but one of the ones I experienced was I found myself on a laptop that was in a kiosk mode, and my task was to break out of that kiosk mode. Which, pro tip, if you're trying to break out of a graphical kiosk mode, if it's Linux or Windows or whatever, if you can get to the help file, you can probably pop a shell. In Windows, you can do it in Paint too. There's like 6 pixels. There's 6 color pixels you can put in a row in Paint, save it as a batch file, open it up again, and you get command.exe. It's really wild. I did it on an ATM once. So anyway, so I'm on this laptop and I'm trying to break out of this. I get terminal to open up through the help file like I talked about. But things are just acting weird. The commands I expect aren't there. It's very pared down. Turns out I was running in BusyBox, which is another shell. So I had to, go back and switch on BusyBox, see what was in there, see, what I could use. You have to be able to identify the shell that you're in, so that you know the capabilities that you have available to you. Another big reason is if you are trying to write some scripts to automate some things, you want to make sure you're writing your script in a syntax that the available shell understands. I've never really had a problem running a bash script with sh or vice versa. I'm sure there are ways to break that, but I also don't write very complicated scripts. So that's just a little bit there on shells and how they work and what they are. A recap on that. So the emulator is a graphical thing you're looking at. The shell is the flashing cursor. That's probably the easiest way to keep that in the back of your brain. Now, a shell can also be the graphical environment, right? So when you're in Ubuntu and you're using GNOME or GNOME or however it is you choose to pronounce that word, the entire environment you're looking at is the GNOME shell. The emulator I opened was GNOME terminal, and then inside that emulator was the bash shell. So it's like a shell emulator shell. It gets a little wonky. But the shell is essentially anything that is acting between you and the operating system. So in the GNOME shell example, when you're clicking on the icons and it's opening things up, the graphical environment, GNOME is actually sending those commands, it's talking to the operating system on your behalf, coming back to you. That's why it's also a shell. And we talked a little bit about the differences in the different shells. They come in different flavors. SH is always going to be there. Bash is pretty common. It's probably always going to be there. And then my favorite is ZSH, and I'm going to show that one off here in just a little bit. All right, font size. I squint a lot because, one, I'm not wearing my glasses right now because I got a light in front of me I don't want to reflect off. But two, I don't know, just small font doesn't really work with me, right? And you might have seen this a little bit when I was working in those machines. When I first opened up the terminal, come on now, there we go. The text is a default size. And let's just actually look and see what pitch this is right now. If I go into preferences and I go into profiles, it's like it's a 13 pitch font, possibly, which that does not look like 13 to me, at least on my screen. It looks more like 8 or 9. That's probably gonna be a resolution thing from the virtual machine. But I don't want to squint. I don't want to like have to, lean forward and look like I'm putting my face into the screen here. So there's a little keyboard shortcut you can use. This works on most emulators that I've come across. It's just you want to do it's the plus and minus keys. So to get the plus key, obviously that's a shift involved, right? So Control Shift plus key or Control minus key. So put Control Shift plus. There we go. So I can zoom that way in, bring it way up there. Great for presentations. And then Control minus, I can take it down again. There we go. Now that does not persist, right? So if I close this and I open it up again, we're back to that tiny, minuscule pitch 13 again. Your emulator that you're running is a program, right? Most programs have configs, have options. So here we're going to go in our profile section, say, I don't want to use default. I'm going to go to some other mono font. We'll just pick Sans, Deja Vu Sans for right now. And then down here, I'm just going to boost that up to like 20. Select and close it. And there we go. The reason I say I wish I was taught this when I started off is because I probably spent a good number of years squinting at the screen and having to have that monitor a little closer than what was probably comfortable or aesthetically pleasing. Now, most of the time you just open up your shell. If it's not where you want it, you plus and minus a little bit, get it where you want it, do what you got to do. If it's your machine, start playing with the preferences and set it how you want it and forget it. Back to the deck. Tmux. Oh, how I wish I had been taught about screen and or Tmux early on in my journey. So screen is probably conversationally the more known of the two, but I meant to confirm this before the thing here today, but I thought screen became deprecated. I have to double check on that. But for whatever reason, Tmux is the one that I fell into. Here's the scenario, right? And you already see it on the slide. You're remote connected into a server somewhere. You're working on some script or you're coding something. I don't know what you're doing. You're doing something, right? You haven't saved it yet, and the SSH connection drops. Something bad happens. Your computer catches on fire. Your local one there is gone. But you get a new one. You install it. You SSH back into that server, and you're greeted with a fresh SSH section. All of your work is gone. All that unsaved work, done, right? Tmux is something you can run it on your local machine or on the remote machine, but in the example that I'm giving you, I use it on remote machines. When I SSH to a server or one of my EC2s or just something that's not here, something that's not on my local machine, I typically will first launch Tmux first thing when I get in there. Then if I need to take a break, walk away, or like in my case, the network infrastructure that I've been working on as a project at work, we have very short timeouts on our SSH sessions. So if you're not doing anything, if you're reading an article, if you just get a copy or whatever, you come back, your session is probably dead. So first thing I do, SSH in, start Tmux, do what I gotta do. And if I gotta like lock my screen, walk away, whatever, I come back. If that connection is dropped, I just connect back in, open that session again, and my work is still there. I'm gonna show that to you right now. Here we go, back to our demo machine. And for this, I'm actually gonna have to switch users to my user, which is gonna start giving you a kind of a peek of that ZSH shell I was telling you about. So let me log into me. If I typed that right, I don't think I did. Yeah. I can't password today because you're all watching me. Can everyone just look away for just a minute? Everyone look away. Don't look at your screen. Okay, you can look now. It's back. All right, so let's get logged in here. This is, there we go. Law demos. All right, oh, see, look, I'm justified. There was internal error. All right, now I'm in my environment that I prefer, so I open up Terminator. You'll see my shell looks a little different here. That is, ZSH is extremely customizable. So is Bash actually a lot. If you jump into your Bash, it's called .bashrc is the config file, or in this case .zshrc. There's a line in there for a section called PS1s, capital P, capital S1. Not PlayStation 1, but that is the actual prompt you see when you open it up. So there's just loads of customization you can do to that. And I'm going to show off some of those later on as well. So here I am locally on my virtual machine on my laptop, and you'll see it says that I am me, TC at demo box. So I'm going to just SSH up to, I can, again, typing in public is hard. Typing in public and math in public, two things you don't want to do. Is that TC org, and then go. All right, here we go. So I am now at Kellen. I think you're unmuted and typing. Right, I don't think that's my keyboard I'm hearing. I don't know. Anyway, so here I am. I just logged into one of my SSHs or one of my remote servers that I have. And you'll see that my prompt changed. Another little cue on the why I use ZSH. This theme that I'm in, the host name changed to red, which tells me that I'm now on a remote machine versus the green where I was on the local machine. Clean it up a little bit. So now, since I'm remote, I don't want to lose any work I'm doing. I'm going to do Tmux, push enter, and you'll see the bar that forms at the bottom of the screen is now Tmux. So that's a little misleading. If you've ever used Tmux before, first thing you're going to say is, that's not Tmux. It doesn't look anything like Tmux. Well, you're right. If I was to get on up here, let me just, for giggles here, I'm going to do sudo u standard user Tmux. I think I got Tmux installed here. Oh, my password. All right, so see now I've the reason I did the sudo tac u standard user, that allows me to run a command as standard user as long as my account is allowed to do that through access control. But because I'm running it as that user, it's using that user's .files in their home directory, which they don't have the crazy custom ones that I do. So what you're seeing here is the typical Tmux setup, just that green bar at the bottom. So let's get out of here because I don't like that. There we go, back here. Now I'm gonna do some stuff. I'm gonna, let's just make a dir for demo. CD into demo. See this empty demo. Here we go. We're gonna touch. This is a thing. And see now we have a file. This is a thing, and then I would start doing whatever it is I'm gonna do in that file. And then all of a sudden, oh crap, I've lost connection. Right. Now already I can see where this is kind of a flawed demo because that was a saved thing. So that was a bad demo. I don't like that demo. I changed my mind. Redo the demo, right? There we go. Go back in that session. So see, I have my history here that I had up, but let's just go into Vim and open that file. And I'm just, this is epic coding I'm doing right now. So this is all because I like hacker script and stuff. like I type in ciphers. You don't even notice what happened right now. All right, there we go. Now, I have not saved this file, right? All my important work is volatile, and I'll lose my connection. It's the same thing. Bring it back up. Now I do Tmux. It was just Tmux to start it. Tmux space A to get into my last session. And you can go crazy with this. You can start new sessions. You give names to, and you can do Tmux A, the name, and you can get into different sessions. There are some really pro level Tmux uses out there, but I'm still kind of a noob with it. So Tmux A, there's my work. See, it wasn't lost. It was waiting for me. Now, if the server had reset, if the remote side had reset, I would have lost this. And I have heard there's some plugins you can get for Tmux to negate that risk as well, but I haven't started messing with those just yet. So let me just do the real trick here, and let me just exit Vim. Do that first try. Exited Vim. I'm a pro. So that's Tmux. Also with Tmux, something you can do. You can't see me do it because it's keyboard shortcuts, but to interact with the Tmux session or the Tmux application that's running, you have to hit a hotkey combo first, which by default is Control B, and then you hit another key after that to do some things. So if I do Control B and the %, I now have a split screen horizontally. I can do Control B left to go to the left, and Control B right to go to the right. Just make sure you don't hit it too quick. So if you do Control B and you hold it and you hit left or right, it changes the size of your split there. There we go. So if I do Control B and the quotation, see what I'm starting to do here is I'm starting to build up that same kind of grid that I had going. And this is extremely useful if you're on a server and you are, you're trying to run Apache or something, and Apache won't start. So you want to watch the error file, right? So you can, in one of these panes, you can tail tack F for follow the error log, and then in another one you can do Apache stuff, and you can watch that file while you're doing the thing. You can have another one running journal CTL to watch the syslog. You can be doing multiple things at one time. And then if you again lose your connection or my laptop exploded or something, if I got back into the SSH session and Tmux space A, this would also be running. That tail would still be running. The journal CTL would still be running. Everything would still be happening as if nothing had happened. So Tmux is extremely powerful and useful to use on those remote sessions. Now, keeping in mind the security side of all this, if you are on a remote session on a box you are pen testing, you have gained remote access onto that machine, I would not recommend using Tmux because it's going to show up in the process list. It's going to be noisy. So obviously, if you're trying to play it low and slow and be sneaky, you don't be running Tmux on your target machines. But on your machines, run them all day long, do what you want to do. I do know there are people out there who enjoy running Tmux locally on their host operating system in their shell or in their terminal emulator. I'm just not one of those because, like I showed you a minute ago, Terminator does the splitting and the also, so in Tmux, I can do Control B C, and you'll see a new tab happen there at the bottom. Control B1, Control B2. Well, that's inside Tmux. My terminal emulator I'm still in is Terminator locally on my virtual machine. So I do Control Shift T, I get a new tab and Terminator. So I just prefer to let Terminator do all of my my local organization, and then if I'm remote, I do Tmux. Personal preference. There are other emulators that do similar types of operations. You find your groove and you go with it. So that's a lot there on Tmux. Let's jump back over to the slides and see where I'm supposed to be. I'm sure I've gotten off topic again. Yep, that's it. Okay, good, cool. Tmux. The big one. This is one of those moments, right? This is, excuse me, I have to get some water. That's how serious this is. I gotta freshen up. So there I was, working that job I told you about, the one that I got let go after a brief period of time there. Now, before I got there, a lot of my education had come through the form of Hack 5. You know, big thanks to Snubs and Darren for putting on those shows and everything, because that was a lot of my early education came from, like Hack Tip and things like that. And when I'd be, you know, watching their demo going on, they would be typing something in terminal, and they would type like half a word, and then the rest of it would just appear. And first couple times I thought maybe that's like a YouTube thing, right? But no, it just kept happening. And I don't know why I didn't like look deeper into it. I don't know, I just didn't. So then you fast forward where I'm at that job, and for a while there, it was just me and one other person with the 2 pen testers they had hired. He was working on something, a script or something, and I'm watching what he's typing. I'm watching the screen, and the same thing happens. I said, "How'd you do that?" And he said, "What?" I said, "How did you make the rest of the command just appear like that?" And he just gave me this look. You know the look? It's like, are you asking because you're joking, or are you asking because you're serious, right? And that's how I learned about tab completion. So we're going to talk about tab completion a little bit, and I have to kind of, if I didn't say anything about this, you wouldn't know, but I'm going to say it anyway. I actually meant for this to go a lot deeper than what it's going to, namely because right now I am actually working on a tab completion problem where I have Red Hat installed on some servers locally, and I have Red Hat installed up in Amazon on EC2 boxes, and they're both Rail 8, and they're both the same version of Rail 8, but obviously came from different sources, and the tab completions are behaving differently, and it's driving me nuts. So I was hoping to use this as an excuse to actually learn some of the nuts and bolts behind tab completion and teach it to you, but I did not get around to doing that, so sorry about that. But we're going to jump into tab completion anyway. Here we go. I'm going to refresh this real quick, and let me make sure. There we go. Don't worry about that. Bring up Terminator. Set it up into some grids. And we're going to do this one for SH. And leave that one bash. And leave, or that's not bash, that's CSH. Leave this one bash. There we go. And we're going to turn on that broadcast again. All right, let's clear it up. I'm actually going to close this one. That didn't work like I wanted it to. Way to go, demo. Oh, blame the demo. Always blame the demo. Never take the blame yourself, ever. Keep it like that. Here we go. SH. Bash and ZSH. Turn on. Oh, I know why it closed. That broadcast on. What a dummy. Here we go. All right. Now I've got 3 shells running. And just from, you know, one would hope they'd all behave the same, but they don't, right? So if I do IP and I want to tab complete that to something, I hit tab twice, and you'll see it gave me a whole option of things I could do here. And perhaps I've jumped ahead of myself, right? So let's just do IP, and I can pick the command that I want. Not all shells are going to behave this way. Some are just going to give you like the next thing, the very first response that comes back. And this is the thing I was talking about where I don't really fully understand how the tab completion is working on the back end. I know you can make these lists of text files, of words. So you say, if this command happens and you tab complete, here's an option of things you can give the user. Beyond that, I'm not really like into it. But you know, if we wanted to see, if we wanted to open up a file in Vim and space and tab, yeah, I can start browsing what I want to open up. I don't really have anything to show you there, but it would show you like the files you can open up. So, and then bigger commands, I wanted like sudo system, and I would do systemctl to like control things on my system, right? So tab, systemctl, See, tab completion now gave me an option of all the things that I can do inside of systemctl. I can reboot, links, whatever. I'm gonna do status. Look, I got two options there. There we go, status, and we'll just do SSH. And I get my status with SSH. So I didn't have to like know the whole syntax. Tab completion helped me out with the syntax. Now I know ZSH has a reputation of having a very smart and robust tab completion. So let's look at that same thing in bash. I do sudo system, and what you didn't see there, right? I did sy s t. I did the em for me. There we go. ctl. Now you see here, unlike ZSH, bash is not giving me that little availability to take the cursor and like select which command I want, right? Bash is just showing me what my options are. So I have to start filling that in a little bit myself. There's a T for status, there we go, SSH. And again, I have to manually type this in myself. So I'm gonna do SSH.s, service and socket. So I'll do the E for service. And there we go. Now, obviously, you're going to move a little faster than that when you're doing things. But tab completion is one of those things that I have heard the story more than once, like my own. People said they have gone years watching these commands magically pop up on the screen, and they either A, are too afraid to ask how that's happening, or B, they've asked and they've kind of been embarrassed by it. And wow, something weird happened over here. Okay, so I just learned something. Apparently broadcast works across tabs, not just on that tab. And I've just done all kinds of crazy things here. Because look, somehow I got Vim opened up over here and it's just gone nuts. So it's, that's fun, right? There we go, the chaos is solved. So again, we do sudo syst tab, and you'll see how they all behave a little different. So bash gave me system, ZSH gave me system and a list of things I can choose from, and then SH just told me, okay, here's two tabs. It just gave me two tabs, and that's it. Tab completion, super strong. But like I said, with my Red Hat installation, it doesn't always behave the same, even though the environments you would think would be identical. So you just have to kind of fill it out and know how your system works, and then you get into nuts and bolts, figure out why it doesn't work and how to fix it. I know one of the most prevalent things I see is that if I'm typing in commands just as myself, tab completion usually works beautifully. But if I prep this with sudo and then start with a command, on a lot of systems, it seems to break tab completion for whatever reason. It doesn't recognize sudo as a precursor to everything. So that's just a little bit on tab completion. I hope that genuinely helps someone, because that's probably the most useful thing I'm going to talk about in here. Or is it? I don't know. Let's find out. Sudo bang bang. So yeah, this was already in my slide deck, but then earlier on Twitter, I think a few people chimed in on the topic, and they were saying sudo bang bang. That's the one that gets me, right? So let's pop over here again, and we're going to close this. Actually, let's just close the whole thing out so we don't get that weird broadcasting going on again. All right, new session. So I'm gonna systemctl status SSH D service, and it showed it to me. I didn't think it would, but if we go in here and we do stop, now this is a Ubuntu thing where it comes up, gives me the opportunity to type my password, and it's gonna authenticate for me. But I want you to just imagine in your head this happened. Access denied. And I started going, wait a minute, I'm an admin. I should have access to do systemctl. I've done this before. I know I have stopped services before. Oh crap, I forgot sudo, right? But I don't want to type all that again. So I'm just going to do sudo space bang bang enter, and look what it did for me. it took the last command I ran. The bang bang is basically a wild card for the last command, and it put sudo in front of there for me, so I can do password. And if I look at the status now, you see that it is in fact stopped. It's down. I can go back up here and I can say, okay, well, now I want to start it again. So I'm going to start. I'm not going to tart it. I'm going to start it. There we go. And again, you're not, especially on a remote connection, if you are working remotely, you're not going to get this pop-up, so ignore that. And oh crap, I did it again. Sudo bang bang, and there we go. So I check the status again. SSH back up. Excellent. Sudo bang bang is a lifesaver when you are running one of those commands that is like 2 lines long. You know, and it's got like 4 or 5 preferences or parameters in it, and you still want to type all that all over again. Now you have other options, right? I mean, I could have pushed up and then the home key to go back to the beginning of the line, which that's something that, again, I figured I didn't learn until later on in life, was that home goes to the beginning of the line, end goes to the end. But home, I can do sudo, I can do it that way. Sudo bang bang just, I guess, feels more efficient, more effective. And then another weird thing you can do is, I don't know why you want to do this, but you do sudo bang, it well, it didn't work on here. Anyway, if you just a solo bang, it does put the space in. So, yeah. Now it's not just sudo bang bang. If you run any command and there's something you wanted to put on the front that you didn't for whatever reason, like sudo is the most common, right? This is not a sudo feature. This is a shell feature. So if I did cat bang bang, see it put cat in front of the sudo for me. Now, again, I don't know when you'd forget that, but if you did, you know, that's something you could do as well. So bang bang is just a shell feature. Sudo bang bang is a lifesaver, but there's another big way you can do this as well, which we're going to hit up next, which is working with the history. I'm sorry, I'm getting to a little fast mode now because I got a little behind the time curve here. We're going to skip copy paste, and we're going to go to history. Oh, that was a spoiler. Right, nothing you do here. History, right? This is a command where you can look and see all the stuff that you've typed over the last little while, right? And yeah, go back to copy and paste. I can go up here and I could copy this. I could highlight it and I could do Control-Shift-C, Control-Shift-V and get it down there and run it again, right? That's a couple of keystrokes. I could also pull that bang out again, bang, and you see this number next to the history, 112, enter, and it didn't work for me. There we go. There's no space. Bang 112, and it pulls up that command. Again, if you have like a long command and it runs like multiple lines, if I have a 2-line command and I wanted to run down, like I'd get way more than I want to. So you can go to the history file and you can find something in there you want to run again, bang that number, it brings it up again. Now another caveat here is sometimes it behaves differently. In some systems, you do bang the number and it not only pulls up that old command, but it runs it immediately as well. And then some systems it doesn't, and I'm not really sure what the causing factor that is. It's probably something in your shell config. Now, what if talking about history file? What if I want to do something like run a test run of a script or of something? You want to start a service. You want to run an Ansible playbook or something, and you got to pass it a password. But just for the sake of brevity, you want to just put that password in as a parameter in your command. You obviously don't want passwords in your history file, right? And this can go for anything. If there's ever something you don't want to show up in the history file, all you got to do is put a space first. So if I put this is in history, there it is there. See, this is in history. If I do a space, this is not in history. it doesn't show up. Now I got to preface that again, because even though I see this work 99% of the time, I have also seen it not work. So the space is not 100%, but that's the way you can keep things from showing up in the history file. And let's hit, I think was the last topic here. Let's see. Again, I'm skipping a couple of these things. Git integration, I gotta show you this real quick. I gotta show you Git integration. If you don't use Git, Git is like a way to collaborate on like open source projects and stuff. You would clone a Git repository from like GitHub or something. You'd get all the files, make the edits you want to make, and then you can open back up. But also in ZSH, watch this. If I do CD, I go into my dot files. I keep my dot files in a GitHub repository, which I'm actually going to share with everyone if they want it. You'll see my prompt change a little bit, and it shows master here, because this folder is a Git repository. And if I change something, it tells me that it's changed. So again, your shell, your command line can do all kinds of crazy things that the default ones don't do. All right, let's talk about editors for a minute. As you see, I've been using Vim. So text-based editors, Vim, Emacs, Nano, all those kind of things can be a little bit intimidating, especially because they use a lot of custom or keystrokes that you wouldn't use on like Word, Notepad, or whatever. So you see me using Vim a little bit, and I know the common joke is, how do you exit Vim, right? So I go into Vim. Again, you'll see my Vim doesn't look a lot like regular Vims because I'm using customizations in those dot files. If I do some stuff here, and then I save it, so I go back to normal. I do W to save. How do I exit Vim? Well, that's colon. It can be Q. It can be colon X. But here's the thing: how do you learn all that? How do you learn all these weird, little things? Well, one way you can do it is when you install Vim on a machine, it comes with a thing called Vim Tutor. Vim Tutor is it is Vim. You are in Vim when you run it, and you basically you start reading through this file, and it teaches you how to use Vim as you read the file by having you do things. It has activities throughout the file. You see here, moving the cursor is the first thing. It says to move the cursor, use these keys. So it wants you to move the cursor until you can see that full thing. So I'm going to use J to go down. And you see I go down here, right? So you can work through Vim Tutor, but there's another one that's actually pretty fun, which is Vim Adventures. This is a browser-based RPG, essentially, that you're the cursor, you play this little shadow cursor, and you actually have to like navigate through this world, and all you can do begin is navigate. All I can do is move around. That's it. I can't do anything else. But as I get through the game, I earn the other Vim stuff. I earn the ability to search for stuff, or to move from beginning of word, beginning of the word, end of word, end of word. Vim Adventures is just a really kind of just goofy, fun way to learn how the editor works, and I wanted to share that with everyone. And that feels like a pretty rushed way to get to the end part of that. But if I go back here to my deck, I think that was the last slide. We talked about stuff, a lot of stuff. I got rushed at the end, but I don't want to go to the summary. I will talk about the end because I want to give time for questions. So Kellen, that is the end of the presentation. And we don't have the full 15 minutes that I'd hoped we'd have for questions at the end, but yeah, Q&A, go.
Test.
Yep, you're on.
Okay, sweet.
I just wanted to make sure. Sorry about the keystrokes. For some reason, it switched over to my webcam mic in the middle of the presentation.
Nice.
And I was like, oh no. Anyways, so let's see here. One of the questions that came in during your talk was, what's the shortcut for Zoom? But you covered that, so that's great. Let's see here. So it looks like they couldn't see the terminal for the Git integration bit. Could you cover that again really quick?
Oh, yeah. I will go back to that. All right, let me go back to my demo machine. We'll get out of Vim tutor. All right, so you see it now?
Yes, that is there.
All right, cool. So yeah, so a regular folder you'll see here is just, it shows me where I am, the host I'm on, the directory I'm in. But my dot files I maintain on GitHub. If I go to my dot files folder, which is the hidden folder with the dot in front of it, you'll see it's got this new thing magically appears in the prompt, which tells me I'm on the master branch. If I did a git checkout the new branch, see now it tells me I'm on the new branch. And the little asterisk there just tells me that something has changed. Like I've made some change, but it git status. I can see that I added a file, which is test, and that goes into like normal git usage. But the point here I was going to show was that there's ways in your shell you can monitor. Oh, and just as a giggle here, if I go to vim test, you'll see that this was not my other Vim, but down here at the bottom, I have a plugin for Vim that tells me git stuff as well if I'm on a certain branch or whatever. So there's all kinds of neat integrations. And like I said, I will share that out, I guess like on the Discord, a link to my GitHub for those dot files. They're really old, so there's probably like, I think my Tmux config, there's a couple errors now, but I'll share that out.
Awesome. There wasn't a lot of questions, just a lot of people who had their minds blown.
Oh. I didn't
A lot
see
of
what
people
were
were really enjoying the talk, and Sudo Bang Bang was a hit.
Yeah, it's the thing. It's what it is when you learn that. Like, where have you been my whole life, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions like that. Everybody was loving it. And we surprisingly didn't have a text editor war in chat, so that's good.
So I read a book a while back called Pro Vim, which I don't think has a new edition out anytime recent. But Pro Vim is actually where I picked up a lot of these ways to modify your shell and stuff. And in the intro for that, he kind of says, yeah, there's Vim, there's Emacs. And the biggest difference in the two is you can tell an Emacs user because they basically live their life inside of Emacs. They do everything in Emacs. They've got their email in Emacs. They've got text browsers in Emacs. Everything is in Emacs, whereas Vim is more just for text editing. So just in the back of my mind, I've always wanted to go try Emacs, but I'm like, I got to figure out Vim first. I'm still not happy where I am with Vim. Once I get that figured out, maybe I'll try Emacs.
Nice. One of the questions we had early on is, would you recommend users making Linux their main OS or stick with Windows and Linux in a VM?
So I do prefer Windows as the host OS and Linux in a virtual machine on like a personal box, mostly because I enjoy playing games, the high-end AAA stuff. So I need Windows on the host OS for that to get the GPU access and everything. But really, a lot of even laptops now are coming with enough beef to them. You can get a 32 or a 64 gig machine with like 4, 6, or 8 cores on the CPU, and you can run a whole simulated infrastructure of VMs with like identity servers and NFSs and web servers and work. You can do everything in VMs. It's pretty astounding where we are with that now versus like 5, 10 years ago.
Awesome. And then one last question is, what are pen test, like what is a pen test interview like? Just generally speaking from what you've experienced.
I can tell you that when I interview people for pen test positions, I ask a few small technical questions. Like if they have something on their resume they call out that they say they're technically proficient or an expert on, like I might dig into that a little bit. But I ask more ethereal questions. Like one of my favorite questions, I'm gonna give it away. It is probably ruined from this point on, but I mentioned I did some ATM testing. I worked at the bank, right? And the way that happened was my boss came to me and they had been outsourcing that, and they said, we want to bring that in-house, but no one here knows how to pen test an ATM. So the lab is waiting for you. Spend the next 6, 8 weeks, whatever you need to down there, and just figure out how to pen test an ATM. And when I got there to the lab, it was a lab with every model of ATM this bank had. And they gave me a key that would open all the ATMs, and I just go, do whatever you want, So the question I give people is, you've been given this task. You have never seen the inside of an ATM. You don't know how they work. You don't know anything about them, right? You've been given a key and you've been said, figure out how you want to pen test this thing. What would you do? And there's no right or wrong answer. I'm looking to see their thought process. I'm looking to see what they are interested in. And I'm looking to see, how, who's the person that's going to say that they're going to focus on the OS, who's going to say they're going to focus on the hardware, who's going to focus on, manipulating data or, reputational damage. Actually, one of the neatest things I did at ATM was I changed the displays one time to say, in the lab, obviously, when the cash dispense just said, here's stupid, take your money. And but yeah, in an interview, what I'm looking for is I'm looking to learn your thought process, to see some of that creative spark, and to see if the route you take on that kind of fits the skills gap I'm trying to complete on my team.